I'm Joshua, and I'm an ITP, and first and foremost, I would like to say thank you for viewing this video, and subsequently visiting my channel. The topic of this video will be on the rarity of creativity from an evolutionary standpoint. Now, it's the case that creativity, despite what a lot of people say, creativity is a fairly rare trait in the sense of it being a personality dimension. It's rare. But creativity is a ubiquitous human phenomenon such that if you get things to a certain, if you have it such that certain I would say prerequisites are met in terms of expertise, motivation, and opportunity and chance, that any person can come up with something that's creative. However, when I mean creativity as a trait, I mean a personality complex that one would probably describe as schizotypy, or schizotypy meshed with openness to the trait of openness to experience in the Big Five model, roughly. And so it's the case that I would term those individuals, or at least researchers term those individuals, as clinically creative or creative individuals, creative people, because you wanna label people whenever you're a scientist. So it's the case that why are there so few of these individuals in the world? Why are they a rarity? Because they honestly are a rarity. You don't find many people that are creative clinically. And it's the case, and this is the case, when you're looking at somebody who's creative, they're one, interested in patterns, more so than most people probably are interested in patterns. They're pattern seeking, and they find patterns meaningful. They just find patterns meaningful. Two, they tend to be unconventional, or they tend to be liberal. Very much so that they move to the beat of their own drum. Three, they tend to be risk-taking, highly interested in risk-taking. And four, they tend to be hyper-exploratory. That's the case. There is variation amongst other factors, but these four things you're going to find with any creative person. I don't care whether or not they're emotionally based or they're thinking based. That's going to be the case with any creative person. I mean, excuse IQ and a whole host of other things. Those are some consistent facets that you're going to find. Now, it's the case that if you look at any one of those traits, if you put those traits on a Pleistocene landscape where there is active predation and cause for concern, the reason why there aren't many creative people is because most of them died, or most of them were killed. I kid you not, because it's the fact that if you're always risking yourself and you have to be involved with troops and small social groups, you're risking the neck of other people, and all of your all of the risks you take don't always pay off if you're a creative person. And people do not appreciate it. People might not mind if you jeopardize your own life, but they really don't appreciate it when you jeopardize theirs. So they'll kill you, most likely. Most creative people, honestly, were probably killed or probably died. Because it's the case that if you decide to be risk-taking in the world, I mean, your chances of actually winning, your chances of actually securing the item that motivated you in the first place to take the risk is very slim, because there's a whole host of variables and probabilities that you can't see in the situation that you couldn't calculate or account for. So it's a complete crapshoot whether or not you're going to be successful or not be successful. And whenever you take in and act out ventures where you haven't done a great statistical modeling of the potential probabilities, your chances of success diminish significantly. And whether or not somebody wins or somebody loses is just really happenstance, very much happenstance. So it's the case that creative people take risks, and it's not been since the advent of, like, at least mathematics that we've had any way to calculate risk and to really weigh out the dynamics of a situation in any meaningful way that made it such that we could rely on the results consistently at any point in time and roughly with the proper approximation to whatever landscape we exist in or whatever person or whatever such and such that we were dealing with. And it's the case that risk-taking honestly will get you killed quicker than just about anything else. Or it can get you killed. Because there's a whole other complex of motivations that are driving a person. Their creativity is a for. It's a for this or a for that. It's something that pulls things towards the drives. Just as intelligence is a for, or conscientiousness is a for. They get you things, but they're not the things that move the individual or drive the individual. But the thing about the fours, the thing about the ways that you choose to get the whys is that some of the four way of creativity is an anathema to the whys in an immediate sense. So your drive for sex, you might spot that the chief's daughter is the most exceptionally looking, beautiful thing in the environment, and she's wedded to whatever warrior chief of the next tribe over, but you know that, you spotted a pattern, and you could get a night with her. Yeah, you're gonna take that risk as a creative person, but you're probably not gonna live through it. Like, you're probably not gonna live through it. You're probably not gonna live through it. And it's also the case too that if you're unconventional, even if you're not agreeable, people aren't gonna like you because you're different. And it's the case that people, and I mean like this, tribalism is a very real factor of human existence, and it's the case that racism is not going anywhere. For the mere fact that we tend to create groups, and we tend to create in-groups, and we tend to create out-groups. And if you're creative, you could be of your own people, and you will put yourself in an out-group. Your existence will create an out-group just by how you are. And then, if you don't act on the immediacies of now in terms of being pattern-seeking, rather than all human beings to a certain degree are pattern-seeking, and notice patterns. But creative people tend to be interested in patterns to their detriment at times. To the absolute bone of their detriment. And it's the case that if you decide that the rustling in the bush means something rather than a predator, it very well might. But you probably, if it's a predator, you're probably not gonna live to find out. It's always a maybe, it's always a might. But the thing is with the maybes and the mights is that they're very significant in tipping the scales to our favor. That's the only reason we have creative people. But it's the case that if everybody was creative, we'd all be dead, or most of the world would be dead. It's the case that you do need conservative people, and you need people who are disproportionately conscientious to the degree that it snuffs out all their creativity. Because at least things with them are going to be predictable and consistent. And they're going to make it such that the environment is stable. They're just going to stabilize the environment. But creative types flourish in chaos. Like, they really, really flourish in chaos. Well, there's an issue. When you have high ranges and degrees of chaos, the probability of your death increases drastically. Almost exponentially. But mostly quadratically. Mostly quadratically. But it's just like, it's serious. It's very serious. But you gotta have them in the system. Because we have to have a way to reinvent the game, essentially, that we're playing in terms of what constitutes existence. But there's a reason why creativity is rare, and it's not necessarily because society represses it, though it does. It's not necessarily due to that, but there's real evolutionary reasons why creative individuals, I should say, are rare. Because they don't most times they don't reproduce, or they don't live, like, very long. And it's the case that they don't live very long, and it's the case that they're not going to over-represent a population for the most part in most cases and scenarios, because you have to look for art's a great example, because art for the most part were, I mean, like, cave paintings in terms of their colors, or if they are colored, are beautiful and things. It's the mode of expression that's beautiful, but it's not like it's Picasso or Da Vinci or anything like that. I mean, or Monet. I mean, you know, we didn't get modern art until rather recently. And it's the case, too, that you don't have advances of technology until post-agriculture, because you need the environment to be stable, because creative individuals, a feature of their risk-taking is they're opportunistic. I mean, they for future sighting, impulsivity is probably what most impetuous is probably the way that most individuals would describe them. But it's the case that when the environment is not ruptuous with just complete danger and disaster in it, that impulsivity, that tendency for risk-taking, that tendency to be an opportunist leads you to have favorable pursuits in hand that other people might not be privy to see initially. Because the fact that creative people like patterns and they look for patterns, they tend to make things out of reality that may not necessarily be there. But that's why they're creative, because they don't have to be there. They'll make it there. That's the whole point of the feature of creativity, is that it can invent the game, or it can invent a new network and system for itself. But if there's not enough stability in the environment, it can't really germinate to be something that's more than just hedonic pursuit. And I don't mean that in the or short-term pursuit and gambling strategies. That's because creativity fundamentally is a gambling strategy, and it's not the case that that's a very sustainable a way of being whenever the environment stands to kill you. And I'm willing to bet that as the environment gets more unstable, that you find less creative people within any given population. It's only until you have a certain amount of stability that you can get you can have more creative people. Not because statistically they'd be a greater frequency, but just more of them would live. Like, this is the bottom line. They'd exist longer than they probably do. And it's even the case, like, even in our modern age, that most highly creative people don't live very long. I mean, like, well, I mean, it's not the case with all creative people, but I mean, hell, to be creative is a bit of a thing. Like, to be highly creative, I suppose I should say, is a bit of a thing in the sense that your ticket could be punched at any moment, and you might punch it yourself, because that's the type of creature you are. But that's what it means to be creative. But that's why creativity is rare. That's why high levels of creativity is very rare, because it's fundamentally unstable to a certain degree. But it pays to be unstable to a certain degree. Not extremely unstable, but mostly unstable. If you're not completely unstable, it doesn't work. But if you're mostly unstable, then it works. Then you won't be Donnie Darko. But, alright, so yeah, that's a rather short video, but it's on the rarity of creativity from an evolutionary standpoint. Just because I think that I've already said a lot in the past about why societally it's rare, and why it's and how it's so strongly repressed. But I don't ever spell out just exactly why that might make sense, like why the world looks the way that It does, to a certain degree. But hell, the only thing you can do as a creative person is to continue to be creative. You are potentially a ticking time bomb, but you also are a potentially ticking genius. So just go with it and see what happens. That's all you can do. So yeah, that's my video on the rarity of creativity. It was short. Hopefully you found it interesting, and thank you for watching.